I wanted to show you how I go about cutting the pieces of wood that have knots in them or are just too hard to split using my chainsaw here. Cutting pieces of wood this small, it's very easy for them to move and do some serious damage. So I really would only recommend this if you're very comfortable with a chainsaw. If you're a new user, I would say just don't worry about it. Either rent a log splitter to cut these pieces or maybe use them just for the fire pit or something. So I really would only recommend this if you're very comfortable with a chainsaw. If you're a new user, I would say just don't worry about it. Either rent a log splitter to cut these pieces or maybe use them just for the fire pit or something. And the key when you're doing this is you want to always make sure that you rest the dogs of your chainsaw up against the edge of the wood whenever you're cutting. When you're using your chainsaw, it wants to pull anything you're cutting towards the saw. So by resting these dogs against the log, you're not fighting the chainsaw from trying to pull towards the wood. And you're also going to prevent the wood from kicking back at you, which isn't good. So usually what I'll do is I'll go ahead and get a nice flat log at a comfortable height. I'll put my wood on it and then I'll just go ahead and cut this wood down into smaller pieces. I'll always start my cut with the dog against the wood and then lower the saw into the wood a little at a time. I try to keep the saw on the edge of my body, so if anything happens, if the saw bounces up or gets pulled down or something falls off like the chain, my body's not directly behind the saw. And this is pretty much what I do. If I don't have a log splitter, this is pretty much what I do. If I had a log splitter, I pretty much could run anything through it. And before I start cutting, I just want to show you, I didn't learn this trick until a few years back, but there's two different types of chainsaw oil. You've got your regular summer use oil, which is nice and thick, and then you've got winter use oil, which is nice and thin. So in the winter, it's good to use this stuff. Now, I only cut above about 20 degrees, so I'm not even sure if this is really necessary for what I'm doing. But just know that there are two different types of chainsaw oil out there. So I've got my gloves on, I've got my safety glasses, I'm going to put my earmuffs on. I really should be wearing a pair of chainsaw chaps, and the key here is to work, plan your moves, know what you're doing. If something doesn't look right, stop the cut, back out. I'm going to put my chain brake on so I know the chain's not going to move when the saw starts. Let's see if we can fire her up. Once I'm ready to start cutting, I'm going to take off the chain brake, touch the dogs to the wood, start my cut. I don't really worry about trying to make my pieces of wood super small. I just want to get them to a size that they'll fit into the fireplace or the wood stove for me. These pieces are going to be very good for a longer burn or an all-nighter where you want that big piece to go for a long time. Sometimes when I'm cutting, what'll happen is if you're cutting through a knot, there's so much tension in that knot that once you release the tension on one part, it'll move and kind of catch the saw, and you'll try to move it up and down even though you're a little piece of wood. You can't really get the saw to move. And if that happens, I would just be very careful continuing my cut or stop the saw and get out of there. Cutting pieces of wood this small, it's very easy for them to move and do some serious damage. So I really would only recommend this if you're very comfortable with a chainsaw. If you're a new user, I would say just don't worry about it. Either rent a log splitter to cut these pieces, or maybe use them just for the fire pit or something. Thanks a lot for watching today, folks, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.